Hello, and today this PowerPoint will be going over the Patterson workbook, chapters 7 through 11. And this section, really, we get to jump into the kind of the nitty-gritty, the challenges of being assertive, and then like the specific times when we want to be assertive. So things like when we want to give our opinion, when we want to provide feedback to someone, when we want to make a request of someone. Those are times when it's difficult for us to sometimes be assertive. They can be difficult situations, and so that's what this section of the book talks about. This section is really focused on practicing these skills, and so you'll see as you read through the text, after every few pages there's an opportunity for you to practice, and Patterson gives you some exercises that you can work through. For your discussion board this week, I will ask you to do some of those practice exercises, and then you will have an opportunity to tell us in the discussion board what you learned about yourself through the practice. I encourage you to practice with a partner, with a friend or a family member. If you don't have somebody accessible, you can practice doing these things in the mirror, but it's much, I think, easier and better to work with an actual person. So before we jump into that, though, Patterson does talk about the first step of being assertive is becoming visible. And sometimes our nonverbals communicate something that we don't want to, can disrupt our assertive message. So we may want to say something assertive, we may want to give an assertive message, but our nonverbals are coming off in a way that is either making us appear very passive or sometimes very aggressive, and then our message can't be heard. And so the nonverbals include posture, movements, voice tone, personal space, touch, all of those things. And I apologize that this picture is overlapping with a few of the texts on here. But the second point there is that it's automatic, or our nonverbals are often automatic, and we do it without noticing it and without even being aware of what message we're sending. I give the example, and I excuse my language, but this is the phrase that is used to talk about this, the resting bitch face, right? I'm sure we've heard that, and that's where, you know, an individual, usually a woman, has a facial expression that looks as if she's very upset, annoyed, irritated, frustrated, not approachable, and often women don't even realize that that is the vibe that they're putting off based on their facial expression. So because it is, because our nonverbals come off often without us even knowing or thinking about them, that's why we want to practice them, so we can get that feedback from people, so somebody can say, you know, when you do this, this is kind of the message I'm getting. And getting that feedback is really important. So if you have a close friend or family member who is willing to give you that kind of feedback, that's really key. I just have a few pictures here to demonstrate several of the different types of nonverbals that we can use. So first is posture. When our posture is slumped over, our shoulders are down, we're kind of looking down at the ground. The idea is that we're trying to make ourselves as small as possible. That communicates passiveness, and the girl here in the red shirt has more of a passive posture. Then if you see Kevin Spacey there in his posture, that's him playing the president in the House of Cards, but he has a very aggressive posture there. He's leaning forward, his face and his face plane is forward, and then of course his facial expression is also communicating more aggressiveness as well. But that's an example of an aggressive posture. Often if you're standing, kind of hovering over someone, that can come off as aggressive. And then the two characters there, Jim and Dwight from The Office, they both have a more assertive posture. They're standing straight up, they're giving eye contact, just a relaxed, normal posture there. Next is movements and gestures. So often people talk with their hands, and that does not necessarily connote any specific type of communication style. But sometimes our movements with our arms can communicate passiveness or aggressiveness. So passive can often be real lethargic, or it can be fidgety. So, people who are uncomfortable or in a feeling uncertain may have some fidgeting. Whereas aggressive movements or gestures are going to be more rapid and sharp. You often think about the person, pointing their index finger at you or shaking their finger in your face. That communicates aggressiveness. There's an example there down below of a aggressive gesture. And then assertive is just going to be relaxed and fluid, kind of there's not a lot of tension in your body, and if you talk a lot with your hands, it's just real relaxed. Then we'll move on to physical distance. For assertiveness, and again, this does depend on culture, but we're talking about here in the United States in the typical Western culture, is going to have, for assertive communication, it's going to have normal conversational distance. So for us, that's typically about arm's length, and whereas passive, a person who's feeling more passive in this situation is going to have greater distance, so it's going to try to sit farther away from the person they're communicating with, whereas aggressive is going to be closer than normal. They might be right up in your face, closing in on that personal space. Eye contact. Eye contact is really key when communicating, because lack of eye contact or a real direct eye contact communicates either passive or aggressive. And so assertive, you want there to be frequent eye contact. You're looking at the person, but you're occasionally looking away. You're not glaring at the person. Whereas a passive person is going to be looking downward, avoiding eye contact as much as possible. And then that aggressive is going to be really direct, kind of squinting or glaring right at the person without those occasional glances away. And that type of eye contact can be very threatening and intimidating to people. And so if you tend to have maybe real direct eye contact that can come off as glaring, that's something that you'll want to work on. If eye contact is difficult for you because you're more, you maybe associate with more of the passive style, then you want to be sure to look up more often and give that eye contact. And again, eye contact is cultural, so depending on the culture that you're in, what's acceptable and what's appropriate for eye contact may be different. Facial expression, we talked a little bit about this in the opening. Assertive facial expression is just going to be relaxed and calm. It's going to be appropriate to the content of the message. So if you're talking to somebody about something that's really exciting, your facial expression may denote excitement. If you're talking about something that's sad, or you have to give some bad news, you're going to have a more empathetic facial expression. For a passive communicator, your facial expression may look anxious. There may be a lot of tension. Sometimes there can be nervous laughter or nervous smiling. Sometimes when people are uncomfortable, that can be something that comes off without them even knowing about it, is that they kind of resort to a nervous laughter. So you want to be aware of that if that's something that you tend to do, because it can be obviously inappropriate in certain situations. And then aggressive facial expression, we usually know that when we see it. There's a lot of tension. There's that fixed jaw. They look very angry. Again, that glaring eye contact. Often they might get red in the face. Sometimes you'll see, veins popping from their neck or from their forehead. I had a basketball coach who had a very aggressive facial expression, got real red in the face, and those veins just popped. We were all, worried that he was going to have a heart attack sometimes. So that comes off as a very aggressive facial expression. You'll see down below the woman. These aren't maybe the best examples, but the woman has a more passive facial expression here. She looks uncertain, a little anxious, whereas the male in this picture has that tight jaw, the raised eyebrows, and looks, or at least to me, appears to be angry. Physical contact, again, this is going to depend on culture, but for assertive nonverbals, you're going to touch the person no more or less than you would in a normal situation. For a passive person, touching is going to be very minimal, maybe never touching the person. So even in a situation where a pat on the back or something would be appropriate to show concern, a passive person may feel uncomfortable with that. Whereas an aggressive person, their physical contact can be firm, kind of the jabbing, again, the finger in your face, and it can, aggressive physical contact can lead to violence. The last one here is voice tone. So our voice tone also communicates something. We may be saying something with our words, but the actual voice tone that we're using may communicate something else. For assertiveness, we just are looking for a warm, normal volume, normal fluency voice tone, whereas passive is going to often be very quiet, even almost to the point where you can't hear what they're saying. They're almost question talking. What we mean by that is when they're speaking, they don't speak in real declarative sentences. They end kind of on a high note, like it's a question, because they don't feel real confident in what they're saying. And then aggressive voice tone is going to be that yelling, gritted teeth, hostile, condescending. Again, we usually know that when we see it. And I apologize, there's one more here. Fluency. For assertiveness, it's going to have an even flow, sounds conversational. For passive, often there's a lot of hesitation or incomplete sentences, because, again, just being uncertain or unsure of themselves. For aggressiveness, it can sometimes be slower or faster, just depending on the person. Often, aggressive fluency comes off as that sputtering rage, where they're just, yelling and screaming and not making much sense, but talking very, very fast. And then the last thing that they put under nonverbals is physical appearance. And that is how somebody is dressed. For assertiveness, the assertive nonverbal physical appearance is going to be how you normally would dress. It reflects your own personality and your preferences, and it's appropriate to different situations. So for a job interview, you dress a certain way. For a volleyball game, you dress a certain way. Passive physical appearance, you're trying to blend in with the group. So you wear whatever everyone else is wearing, just so you don't draw any attention to yourself. And then for aggressive, and the key here is the intent, but is when you choose clothes or hair or accessories that are to intimidate someone or to provoke someone. So for example, if you're invited to a very formal wedding and you know it'd be upsetting to the bride and groom if you dressed in jeans, but you choose to do so anyway just to kind of irritate them, that'd be an example of choosing a more aggressive approach to physical appearance. So the next chapter that Patterson goes into is giving your opinion. And it can be very difficult for people, especially who are passive, to feel comfortable giving their opinion. For passive people, they often avoid giving their opinion, or they wait for others and then just agree with what the majority are saying without really stating their own views. Aggressive people, they're usually very willing to give their opinion, but they do so in a way that makes other people, they put down other people's opinions, or if someone disagrees with them, they try to make them change their opinion or make them feel bad or stupid for having that opinion. Passive aggressive is, again, that mixture. They don't disagree with the person directly face to face, but they make their opinion known in another way that could come back to hurt them. So it might be sarcastic text or a Facebook post or something like that. Assertive people are willing to express their opinion. They take ownership of that opinion, and they're okay if someone disagrees with them. They don't need to change their mind. They feel confident in their opinion, and they're able to let others express theirs. I'm going to go into the helpful tips and then moving on to the other giving positive feedback in the next PowerPoint.